Hello, everyone. Welcome to Healthy Relationships Part 2. This is our first week together in this new session of class. Everyone who is participating in this should have already completed Part 1 of Healthy Relationships, even if it's been a while since you've been through that class. If you haven't yet completed Part 1, then please take that first. We will have another session coming up soon. If you're interested in that, please send me an email at pamela.jacobs@couragebeyond.org, and I'll be sure to notify you when we have another session of Part 1 coming up. It's really important that you have that foundation of the things that we discussed and worked through in Part 1 before you move on to taking this class. So if you would, let me know, and we'll make sure that we can get you connected with the next Part 1 session that comes up. So Part 1 is a 6-week course where we talk through lots of different pieces of our relationships and how we can really focus on improving ourselves and improving our relationships and creating the life and the relationship that we truly want to have and that we deserve to have. I know that it's been a while for some of you since you've taken Part 1. Some of you just completed it. You were in our most recent session, but for others, it's been a little bit of time. So in today's class, in our first class of this session, I just wanted to take some time to go through some of the things we talked about in Part 1 and just do a little bit of a refresher. So that's what we're going to be doing today. For those of you who don't remember, I'm Pamela Jacobs, and I'll be your facilitator for this class. And I was the person who facilitated Part 1 for you, so we've already talked and gotten to know one another. And as far as how this class will go, it's really similar to what we did in Part 1. I'll give you a couple of the reminders again. Just like the Part 1 of Healthy Relationships, this is an educational class. It's meant to be a community where we can support one another and learn together. This is not meant to be a substitute for counseling. I'm not a counselor. I'm an attorney and an advocate, and I've worked with survivors of abuse and of sexual assault and worked on helping people create healthy relationships and prevent abuse from happening. I've done this work for many, many years, but I am not a counselor. So it's really important that you're working with someone who is trained in counseling and in those therapeutic treatments, especially as we're talking through these concepts, because we're going to be unpacking a lot of things. It may bring up things from your past. It may bring up struggles that you're having in your current relationship. And having a counselor, that professional by your side as you go through this, is really important. That's an integral piece of your support system. So if you're not already working with someone, please give us a call, 866-781-8010, to get connected with a counselor in your area. And that's also the crisis line number that you can call 24 hours a day if you just want someone to talk to. I also would encourage you to get connected with the other supportive communities that we have here at Courage Beyond. One in particular that I'll point out is Trench Talk, and that's a private community that meets on Facebook, and it's a place where you can share successes and celebrate with others who are going through similar things, and also where you can share struggles and where you can go to other people for support. There are over 200 people in that community who are all connected to the military in some way, and many of whom can understand some of the things that you're experiencing. So I definitely encourage you to get connected with Trench Talk as well. If you'd like some help connecting with them, let me know, and I'll be happy to put you in touch. Just like in Part 1, it's really important that we honor each other's confidentiality. So as I always say, this is like Vegas, only so much better, way more fun. What is shared here needs to stay here. I really want you to feel safe sharing questions that you have, sharing your experiences, talking about struggles and successes that you've had in your relationship. And especially here in this continuation, this Part 2 course, I'm really going to be checking in with each of you about what's happened in your relationship and in your life since Part 1. And I want you to feel safe sharing. So in order for us to all feel safe, it's important that we keep what's shared here confidential. And also that there's no judgment, no gossip. As you all know, anyone who's been a part of the military community knows it's a huge community, and it's also an incredibly tiny community. Everyone knows someone who knows someone. So it's important that we honor the privacy and confidentiality, and that we don't gossip or judge anyone who's in this group. If you would like to share a piece of your story, whether it's what's happened for you since the last class, or maybe it's that taking this class has brought up for you some experiences that you've had in the past, or maybe an abusive relationship that you were able to overcome. If there's something like that that you would like to share with us, we would be honored to hear it. Just send me an email and let me know, and we can definitely make sure that we have time set aside for you to do so. Of course, you're always welcome to share any time in class, but if you would actually like to have some time to talk through your experience and share and use that to help others as well, and also to get some support for yourself, then please let us know. We'll be happy to make space for that. Again, as I said, in today's class, I'm just going to do an overview of some of the things we talked about in part one. So for those of you who recently finished part one, this may be a pretty quick overview for you, maybe things that you've heard recently, but for those of you that it's been a little bit longer, you may hear things phrased differently because I do change the class up a little bit each time. Have made some kind of big changes to it in the past few months, so this may be a little bit different than what you heard if you took the class in one of our earlier sessions, but the concepts are pretty much the same. So again, just to do a little bit of an overview, we started off talking about the elements of a healthy relationship. And I encouraged you all at the beginning of part one to really spend some time thinking about what your ideal relationship would look like, and kind of taking your partner out of the picture, not writing about what you would want him or her to do or how you would want them to change, but really focusing on yourself and what you want in your ideal healthy relationship. So how much time would you spend together? What kinds of activities would you do together? How would your partner treat you? How would your partner make you feel? How would you feel in that relationship? How much personal time would you have? Where would you live? Would you live together? Would you live in a different city? What kinds of hobbies would you share? So really getting into the details of what that relationship would look like for you. The reason it's important to do that is because in order for us to really get an idea of what's happening in our relationship that we don't want, it's important for us to know what we do want. And it doesn't mean that you're expecting your current partner to live up to that ideal or to give you that ideal, but at least you know what things are important to you, you know what matters to you, and what you would like your relationship to look like. And that can draw attention to the things that are happening in your relationship that you're not comfortable with. Maybe areas where maybe you wrote about the fact that you would like to feel respected and you would like to feel appreciated in your relationship, and in your current relationship, you're not feeling that. And that can highlight areas where you need to focus and where you need to speak up and talk with your partner and start setting some of those boundaries and asking for what you want and need. You can't ask for what you want if you don't know what you want. So if you didn't do that activity in writing about your ideal relationship, or if it's been a while and you think it might be helpful for you to revisit that, I definitely encourage you to do that. Again, just a note on journaling and writing things down for class. As I told you before, only do that if you can keep a journal safely. If you're in a situation where someone in your home may read what you write and it may put you in a dangerous situation or may just make you uncomfortable, then you certainly don't have to keep a journal. You can just think through these things, or if there's somewhere else you could keep it and it would be safe, then you could do that as well. But of course, your safety and comfort are always top priority. So some of the elements we talked about, and in each of your classes, I had each of you identify what comes to mind when you think of your ideal relationship or a healthy relationship. And these are some of the words that are most commonly used. Respect. Of course, we all want to feel respected by our partners, and that's incredibly important. Equal work and effort, and I like to think of this as willingness. This is such an important piece of a healthy relationship because it's not just about being able to identify what's wrong in the relationship or what's going well. It's about each person being willing to put in the work that's necessary to improve themselves, to improve how they talk to their partner, how they handle day-to-day stresses. So willingness on the part of each person. What often happens is that one person in the relationship is really dedicated to fixing it and making things better, and they want to help their partner be better and help them get through things, but the other person isn't willing. And that's not sustainable. It may work for a while, but eventually the one who's doing all the work is going to start to feel resentful and exhausted and unappreciated. So in a healthy relationship, both people are putting in that work to work on their own stuff and to just improve the well-being of the relationship. Okay, so that willingness on the part of both people. This comes up a lot in Trench Talk, and when people are in healthy relationships as well, or when people are reaching out to me saying that they're noticing concerning behavior by their partner. And a lot of times, and we'll get into this in just a minute, but a lot of times people will say, he's doing these things that are really bothering me, but I don't know if he knows what he's doing. I don't know if he's aware of his behavior. And a lot of times what it boils down to when I'm talking to folks is, okay, but is he willing to listen to you and hear your concerns? And if he does then recognize that he's doing something that makes you uncomfortable, is he willing to change it? It may not be immediate, and especially if it's something that's caused by post-traumatic stress or something that's learned behavior that something he's been doing for many, many years, or that she's been doing for many, many years. It may take some time to make that change, but is your partner willing to look at it and willing to do the work necessary to make that change? Okay, so it may not happen overnight, but are they willing to do that work and to put in that effort? Okay. Another important piece is consensual and enjoyable intimacy and connection. This isn't just about sexual intimacy, but that's certainly a part of it. But having time together where you feel connected, where you feel safe with your partner, so that you're not being coerced into doing things that you're not comfortable doing. It's not that you're being guilted into intimacy or into a sexual connection, but you're both truly enjoying that connection that you have with one another. Trust, and again, this isn't just about faithfulness. This is about really being able to trust your partner with your emotions, with your body, with your thoughts, with your feelings, with your dreams, knowing that you can trust that person. Having their support, them having empathy for you when you're going through something, when you're struggling with something, and being able to comfort one another during those times. Effective communication, listening to each other, and not attacking each other. And then, of course, physical and emotional safety. So when I talk about how important it is to feel safe in your relationship, I'm not talking only about knowing that your partner won't hit you or won't scream at you or won't put you down, but it's also about emotional safety. So can you come to your partner and say, I'm concerned about this. I'm having a problem with this. What you did the other day made me uncomfortable because. Can you bring up those concerns and know that you won't be humiliated, degraded, told that you're overreacting, that you're being ridiculous, ignored? Do you feel safe bringing these things up and know that you're not going to have some kind of backlash because of it? That's emotional safety. Okay? And again, the scale is to remind us that in a healthy relationship, power is balanced on both sides. There's not one person who's in charge of the other. One person's not setting all the rules while the other person has to keep quiet. It's an equal partnership. And there may be times when, and especially in a caretaker situation, or maybe when one person is deployed or dealing with some kind of an illness or an injury, there may be times when one person has more responsibility than the other, but you should both have equal power. So it shouldn't be that one person feels like their needs don't matter as much as the other, or where one person feels like they're having to change who they are to make their partner happy. Okay, so you should be equals in this relationship. If it's been a while since you've taken part 1 of this course, or even if it hasn't been a while and you just want to check back in, this is a quiz that we did in part 1, the Healthy Relationships quiz. If you'd like me to email a copy of this to you, I certainly can. Otherwise, just take a couple of minutes to work through these questions. And as a reminder, so you read each statement and then write down yes or no. Don't spend too much time thinking about it. I'm definitely an overthinker, so I can kind of change the outcome of pretty much any quiz because I just overthink it and then change my answers. So go with your gut reaction and write down yes or no for each of these 15 questions. So 15 statements. So for example, number 1, my partner is supportive of things I do, yes or no. So take a couple of minutes, go through these 15 statements. And if you took this quiz in part 1, this may be really helpful to see if things have changed. See if maybe things have changed in your relationship. And again, this is really focusing on your partner's behavior, whether your partner is supportive of you and respects you as an equal partner. But it can definitely also help you gauge whether you've been able to set those boundaries in your relationship as well. All right, and also remember that when we're talking about what a healthy relationship should look like and should feel like, a healthy relationship allows you to be the full you without limitation. So it should encourage you to be your true self, to have hobbies that matter to you, to have friendships that matter to you, to have connections with family members that are important to you if you have those, to pursue career goals or educational goals, to parent in a way that feels authentic and real to you, to do things that are important to you, to be your full self without feeling like you have to walk on eggshells. You have to be careful about what you say. You have to give up on activities that matter to you because your partner won't approve of them. Okay, so a healthy relationship should feel fulfilling and should feel empowering, should make you feel like you can be your best self instead of limiting you. And of course, we know that realistically, there are things that come up in life that may cause you to have to give up on some things or let go of hobbies that may have been important. There are financial limitations, there are time limitations. But in your relationship, it shouldn't be that you're having to let go of these things because they make your partner uncomfortable, or you can't pursue that hobby because he or she doesn't like you to be out of the house that long, or doesn't like you to spend time with other people, or doesn't want you kind of developing that part of yourself. If you becoming a better person makes your partner feel insecure or intimidated in any way, or makes them try to control you, that's an indication that there's unhealthy behavior happening in your relationship. Because again, it should encourage you to be your full self. When that's not happening, when your hobbies, your friendships, your family connections, your dreams are being limited and stifled in some way, it's an indication that it's not a healthy relationship and that there may be some abuse happening. As we've talked about, abuse is not just about physical violence. And I know abuse is such a harsh term, or can be such a harsh term, that a lot of times we don't ever want to admit that that's what we're experiencing. We think that abuse is something that happens to other people. Abuse is that image you see of the woman kind of cowering in the corner with a black eye and her husband standing over her with his fist. And that certainly is one piece of abuse, but abuse is not always about physical violence. Oftentimes it's not. Abuse is behavior that's being used to control you or to have power over you. So it could be that intimidating type of abuse, the violent abuse, where you're being made to feel afraid, and that's why you don't pursue your dreams or have friends or have hobbies. But sometimes it's more manipulative and it's more subtle than that. Sometimes it's making you feel guilty anytime you talk to a friend, or anytime you want to go to the gym or go to an art class or do something that's important to you. Maybe he starts a fight with you before you go so that it's difficult for you to get there on time. Or he makes sure that he or she makes sure that they have something happening at the same time that you wanted to go do something, so that childcare is an issue. Or, just making you feel guilty and saying, why is this activity more important to you than me? Why don't you want to spend this time with me? So any kind of limiting, trying to control what you do and what things you're able to have access to that are important to you, that is controlling behavior and may also be abusive behavior. Okay, so you get to define for yourself what that is and what that looks like, and whether what's happening in your relationship is abusive. So this class, just like the first class, was not about me or anyone else defining that for you, but I just want us to have a broader definition of what abuse really looks like. So abuse is anytime one partner has more power than the other and feels like they have a right to have that power. So when one person in the relationship says, no, I get to decide who you hang out with, who you spend time with, how you spend your money, how you spend your time, and I'm going to try to change something about you. So it could be, I don't like when you wear your hair that way, you should wear it down. I don't like when you dress that way. And in the beginning, it may have started off much more positive. So, hey, I really love when you wear your hair down. And of course, because you want to impress your partner and you want them to like how you look, then you start to wear your hair down. And in that moment, he then realizes that he can change your behavior. So it can start off subtly. It can start off actually as compliments, just to see whether you do more of what they're complimenting you on. And eventually it may become, I told you I don't like your hair up like that. Why do you keep wearing it that way? Or I don't like when you're hanging out with that particular friend. I don't like them. Why do you spend so much time going to these classes instead of being here at home with me? So you start to feel limited. You start to feel restricted and controlled. And so when that scale gets unbalanced and you feel like you need permission to do the things that are important to you, you feel like you can't be your full self. That is abuse. And again, what's important is not the label. What's important is for you to recognize that you deserve to have the kind of relationship that feels balanced and where you're able to be your full self. Okay. Abuse is not about violence. Violence is certainly a piece of it, and it can get to that point, and it often does get to that point, but it's about power. It's about your partner having power over you. So these are some of the tactics that might be used by a partner who feels entitled to have control and to have power over you. And so these are some things to watch out for. Intimidation could be things like giving you a look. So you're out somewhere, he gives you that look, and you know that you shouldn't be talking to the person you're talking to, or you feel like he's upset about something, and so you come to stand next to him. It could be, destroying property, throwing things around, showing you weapons, things that just make you feel on edge, make you feel anxious, make you feel afraid. Coercion and threats could be threatening to leave you, threatening to cheat on you, threatening to hurt you or the children or pets, or threatening to hurt himself. And we know in our military community, that's a threat that should always be taken seriously. We never want to assume that someone is making that up, but it is also sometimes something that's used to stop you from leaving or to minimize your concerns and bring the focus back onto them. Okay, it could be threatening you to not call the police if he does something violent, or to try to drop charges. Threatening, making you do things that you don't want to do, whatever that may be. Okay. Keeping you from getting a job, ruining your job. So a lot of the people I work with say that, their partner will start fights with them and keep them up all night so that then they're not really able to do a good job the next day. Okay. Making you ask for money, giving you an allowance, making you ask for an allowance, making you report all the money that how you've used all the money. Instead of, again, remember, in that healthy relationship, you're sharing that power, so you're making those economic decisions together. Okay? Making you feel guilty about time you spend with the kids or how you parent the kids, maybe treating one child better than the other. This is especially true if you have a child from a previous relationship, and they may treat that child differently than they treat children you have together. Isolating you, controlling who you talk to, who you see, what you do. And again, that could be done through overtly telling you that you're not able to do those things or being angry with you. It could be through making you feel guilty. It could be through jealousy. So, it makes me crazy when you spend time with, at the gym when all those guys are around. I don't like those guys looking at you. So it could be, using jealousy as a justification for isolating you. Emotional abuse could be putting you down, calling you names. Crazy making is a big piece of emotional abuse. So telling you that you're not remembering things correctly, or hiding things and then making you feel like you're crazy because you can't find them. Changing the way conversations happened. Okay, this is a big piece of it. And this is one that makes it really difficult to identify when you're being abused, because you start to believe that they're telling you the truth. Okay. Humiliating you, making you feel bad about yourself, and guilt is such a powerful tool that someone who feels entitled to control you will use. And especially women, we tend to feel guilty anyway. We tend to carry around guilt about things. We always feel like we're not doing enough. And so that guilt can definitely be used against you. In a healthy relationship, your partner would not try to make you feel guilty for things. Okay, so that's definitely, when you find that you're being made to feel guilty frequently, that's definitely a red flag to pay attention to. Male privilege. So again, as we've talked about, abuse can certainly be committed by a woman, and certainly happens in same-sex relationships. But in relationships where there's a man and a woman, the vast majority of times we know that there's a male abuser and female victim. And that's not because men are bad and women are good. It's because in our culture, at least, men are still able to say things like, I'm the head of the household, I'm the master of the castle, I get to make the decisions here. And in many ways, that's still supported. That may not be how it's happening in your relationship, but we know that overall, men are in a position to be able to carry out power in a way that women often aren't. So if your partner's doing things like defining what his role and your role should look like, and saying, I'm the ultimate decision maker, it doesn't mean that in every relationship where the man is the head of the household that there's abuse, because there are some relationships where that's something you've agreed upon together, and that works for you. But when that's being used, when that position of power that's been given to him is being used to control you, that's when that becomes a piece of this power and control. And then minimizing, denying, and blaming is what abusive partners are experts at. So making light of what happened, telling you it didn't really happen, that you're not remembering it correctly, saying it wasn't that big of a deal, you're overreacting, you're making a big deal out of nothing. And then, of course, saying it's your fault. I wouldn't act this way if you wouldn't push my buttons. I only act this way because of how you treat me. I only act this way because you don't show me enough attention and enough affection. So everything is your fault. And pointing the blame at everyone other than themselves is something I always tell people to look out for, even early on in a relationship. My friends who are dating, I always tell them on the first date, if you start to notice that the person is blaming everyone else for everything that's gone wrong in their life, run. Because the blaming other people instead of ever taking responsibility for their own actions is a huge characteristic of an abuser. And in a relationship, then everything that they do is going to be blamed on you. And they may blame other people as well, but especially on you. And even when they start to do things that are disrespectful and controlling and even dangerous and violent, they'll find a way to blame you or possibly to blame some situation. So it could be that they're blaming their post-traumatic stress. We'll talk about that in just a second. And all of these tactics are being used to have power over you, and they're held together by physical violence, sexual violence, or possibly just the threats of those. So it could be, coercing you into doing something sexually that you're not comfortable doing, telling you if you don't do those things with him, then he'll find someone else who will, or kind of towering over you and yelling at you, maybe not putting his hands on you yet, but towering over you and letting you know that he could if he wanted to, or punching a hole in the wall, or screaming loudly, doing things that are very intimidating. And so that threat of violence or making you feel physically, emotionally, and sexually unsafe holds together all of these tactics. And as we talked about in part one, we know that post-traumatic stress and also TBIs and other disabilities that people may be struggling with can also can be confusing because we may think that that's what's causing this abusive behavior. But we know that there are big differences. And so the main things to look out for, of course, with post-traumatic stress, someone who's suffering from post-traumatic stress may want to avoid situations, especially social situations. They may want to isolate themselves. The person who I'm currently dating doesn't like to be in crowds with people he doesn't know. And so over the weekend, we were both invited to a barbecue. And he said, call me when you get there and let me know who all's there, and then I'll decide if I can come. Okay, so avoidance and isolating themselves is a pretty common symptom of post-traumatic stress. But if that had turned into, I'm not comfortable going, and so I'm going to make you feel guilty if you go, or I guess if you want to go spend time with someone other than me, knowing that I'm uncomfortable in that situation, you can do that. If it would have turned into not just I'm not comfortable going, but I don't want you to go either, that's isolating you, that's isolating the partner, and that is controlling behavior. Okay, so isolating themselves could be a post-traumatic stress symptom, but when it turns into isolating you, then that could be control. Hypervigilance, really common symptom of post-traumatic stress. And again, remember, post-traumatic stress is not limited to combat veterans. You can have post-traumatic stress from your own experiences if you're not the service member or veteran, if you have been abused in a previous relationship, or if you've ever been sexually assaulted, if you've overcome a serious illness, or you've been through a natural disaster. Lots of different traumatic events can cause post-traumatic stress. So you may be experiencing some of these things as well. Okay? I have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder based on my experience as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. That's where my PTSD came from. So it can happen from a variety of different causes and traumatic experiences. So hypervigilance is a piece of that, is a common symptom of post-traumatic stress, regardless of what caused it. And hypervigilance is always being on guard, wanting to protect yourself. When that turns into not only is he guarding himself, but he's telling you, you need to let me know where you are at all times, and kind of stalking and surveillance, okay, checking up on you, calling several times to find out where you are and who you're with, okay, then that's not just post-traumatic stress, that's controlling behavior. Irritability, increased anger, difficulty controlling those emotions can absolutely be a piece of post-traumatic stress, and also difficulty controlling mood emotions can be a component of a TBI as well. But when that turns into intimidation and threats, righteous rage, so that kind of how dare you talk to me like that kind of behavior. And then all those other things we talk about on the wheel, the emotional abuse, economic abuse, coercion, putting you down, making you feel guilty, all of that kind of degrading, minimizing behavior is not caused by post-traumatic stress or by a TBI or by any kind of disability or mental illness. Okay, that's caused by feeling entitled to have control over you in the relationship. There may be times when someone who's struggling with post-traumatic stress may re-experience a traumatic event and may even become violent because of that. But when that's truly what's causing it, they will have sincere shame and remorse for what they've done. Instead of when it's abusive, when it's controlling, again, their go-to is going to be minimizing, denying, and blaming. So it wasn't that bad. It didn't really happen. And if it did happen, it's your fault. Okay. So the tricky part is, we've talked about this before, the tricky part is when someone says, I only act this way because of my PTSD, it's probably not PTSD. Because again, that's blaming someone else. Now remember, you're not trying to figure out which side of the chart your partner falls on, because it could be both. Someone can absolutely suffer from post-traumatic stress and a TBI and have other injuries and also be abusive. Okay, so it's not up to us to necessarily sort out which one is happening. You may not ever know the full causes of their behavior. What matters is, how does it make you feel? Do you feel safe in your relationship? Do you feel respected? Can you be yourself? We'll go through a couple of these questions in just a second, but it's really important that you're focusing on the fact that you deserve to feel safe and to feel respected and to feel like you can be yourself in your relationship, regardless of what's causing your partner's behavior. And whatever is causing their behavior, it's not you. You did nothing to cause it. And the important thing is to remember that you also can do nothing to stop it. Okay? Where we often get caught up in it is identifying that the behavior is unhealthy, but thinking that there's something we can do to change it. And the only person in your relationship you have any control over is yourself. The good news about that is you always have control over yourself. Okay? So there's a lot of power in that, in being able to control yourself and your reactions and what you're willing to tolerate and your boundaries, but you have no control over your partner's behavior. If your partner is abusive or controlling, they're probably telling you that you're doing something to cause it, or there's something that you could do to stop it. So he may be telling you, if you would just back off, I wouldn't act like this. If you would just love me more, if you would spend more time with me. But those rules are going to keep changing. That goal, that end that he keeps encouraging you to reach for, that goal is going to keep moving. Okay, so when your partner has a desire to control you, to change you, to have power over you, there's never going to be anything that you can do that's enough to get that behavior to change. Okay, so it's really important that you remember that you did nothing to cause the behavior, and you can also do nothing to stop it. It's up to your partner to make those changes. And again, that's why it's important to focus on our side of the scale, or on the teeter-totter, whichever metaphor works better for you. Okay? A healthy relationship is balanced. You don't have power over changing your partner's side, but you absolutely have power over your own. So to determine whether or not you're focusing on your side of the scale or the teeter-totter, or whether you're focusing more on your partner's side, this is the quiz that we took a few weeks into part 1, and it'd be a good thing for us to revisit. And if you would, you can just take a second and pause the recording and answer these questions just like you did with the previous quiz. This one's not a yes/no answer though. This one you have to write down a 1, 2, or 3. So the way this works, read each statement, and if this statement sounds just like you, write down a number 1. If it's a little bit like you sometimes feel this way, write down a number 2. If it's not you at all, write down a 3. Again, go with your first gut reaction. Don't overthink it. And I'm telling you this as the person who would overthink it. Okay. So for example, number 1, my partner has some problems, but I've got it under control. If you feel that way, that's how you typically think, write down a number 1. Okay. So take a little bit of time and go through this quiz. There are 12 statements, and you should have an answer of 1, 2, or 3 on each one. All right, when you're done with that, add up your answers. And again, remember, this is about codependency. Codependency means that you put your partner's well-being above your own. It means that you feel like you can only be okay when your partner's okay. So you're focusing on trying to help them instead of focusing on the only person you have any control over, and that's yourself. Codependency is incredibly common. It happens in a lot of relationships. It can happen because we were never taught about focusing on ourselves, or what it even meant to have a healthy relationship. It can happen because of prior abuse or trauma. And it can happen just because of the military lifestyle. Oftentimes we are put in situations where we feel like we need to focus on our partner and make sure they're okay, or we feel like we have to carry all the weight of the relationship. And so it may be that you found yourself starting to focus more on everyone else other than yourself, just because of kind of life and what's happened over these past several years. It's really important that we start to bring that focus back on us and start to take better care of us. So as you add up your scores, if you have less than 23, that means you had quite a few ones in your answers. You need to focus more on yourself. So every time, and I've given you this challenge before, every time you think, oh, I should get him that book, that would help him, or I should get him into this counseling program, or I should get him into this. It's not that there's anything wrong with caring about the other person, but try to focus that attention back onto you. So every time you think I should get him that book or that resource or get him to watch this, instead find something for you to read or to watch, something that will help empower you. And I know that may feel really uncomfortable and selfish, because unfortunately we've been taught that taking care of ourselves is selfish, and it's not. It's important, it's necessary, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we eventually start to feel resentful when we're putting all this work into someone and they're not changing. And that's because they're in charge of their own change. Okay. If you are somewhere in the middle there, you could still do some improvement on focusing on you. If you're over 33, then you've got mostly 3 answers, which means you're really not spending a lot of time focusing only on your partner's well-being. It seems you are taking pretty good care of yourself and setting healthy boundaries. So good job. All right, very quickly, we talked about these questions towards the end of part 1, and I think we'll delve into this a little bit more next week, because I want us to check in and see how we're doing with these questions and moving forward, since we've taken the first part of the class. But questions to help you move forward. Can you be yourself in this relationship? Again, a healthy relationship should encourage you to be your full self. Does your partner lift you up? Do you feel empowered, or do they hold you down or restrict you? Do you want to be with your partner as he or she is today, not who they used to be or not who you hope they become? So instead of, he could be such a great person, he used to be such a great person, who are they right now? How are they treating you today? What boundaries are important to you? And we'll definitely spend some more time with boundaries over the next few weeks. Are you able to clearly articulate what you want and need? And when you do, are those boundaries being respected? What can you do to work on yourself? So again, instead of focusing on helping your partner, what can you do to work on you? What do you want? Again, looking at that ideal relationship, what would that look like for you? What's important to you? What do you want in your life? And does your partner complement that? Does your partner add to that for you? And then, of course, if your partner ever hurts you, scares you, physically hurts you in any way, threatens you in any way, that's not okay. And you certainly deserve to feel safe in your own home. So please reach out and talk to someone. Hopefully you have a friend or a relative or someone close you can talk to. You can also call, of course, the Courage Beyond hotline, 866-781-8010. And if you feel like you need to reach out for some services in your area related to that kind of abuse, you can also call the domestic violence hotline that's listed here, 800-799-SAFE. You deserve to feel safe and respected in your own home, so please reach out and talk to someone if you're not feeling safe. Remember, the choice about how to move forward is always yours. A lot of times we feel this pressure that if we notice that our partner's abusive, we should leave. But if their behavior is caused by post-traumatic stress or a TBI, then we should stay and support them. And it's not that black and white. It's really up to you to look at those questions. Again, look at, can you feel safe? Can you be yourself? And then make the decision that's best for you. So if you're still kind of working through what that decision would look like for you, then this is a great class for you to be in, because we're really going to dig deeper into that over these next few weeks. And please have some grace and patience with yourself, because it can take some time to make that decision. I recently had someone in healthy relationships who said she'd been she'd been struggling with the decision of whether to leave or stay for a couple of years. And as she started to do more and more work on herself and empowering herself and connecting with things that mattered to her, then the decision became much clearer. And she made the decision to end that relationship and is now taking much better care of herself, focusing on her health and well-being and her career and her friendships, and is feeling much better and feeling really confident in that decision. There have also been people who have made the decision to stay and have just focused more on making sure that their needs are met in the relationship. And if their partner's not able to do so, that's okay, because they're focusing on meeting their own needs. We'll talk a lot more about boundaries, about how to set healthy boundaries. And I definitely want to check in with you and see how you're doing with boundaries since you've taken the first class. And I'll leave you with this reminder again. Remember that you deserve the love you would give to someone else. Okay, so when you're giving all this love in the relationship, remember you deserve to receive that love as well. And you don't have to wait for your partner to give you that love and respect and kindness. You can give it to yourself. Be good to you. Okay? Please let me know if I can do anything to help, or if you have any questions, or if you'd like to talk through something. You can reach me at pamela.jacobs@couragebeyond.org. Again, here's the hotline number, 866-781-8010. That's the number you can reach out to 24 hours a day, and also the number you would call to get started with counseling. So please let me know if there's anything at all that I can do or that we can talk through. Otherwise, we will talk next Tuesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. And please come prepared with some questions or some updates. I'd really want to talk with each of you about how things are going since you took the part 1 of Healthy Relationships, and talk a little bit about what areas you are seeing successes in and what areas you may still be having some struggles or hitting some hurdles, so that we know what to focus on to make these next few weeks together the most effective and productive for you. So please let me know if you'd like to send some of those questions or topics you'd like to focus on. If you'd like to send them to my email before class next week, you can certainly do that as well. Thank you all so much for listening to this recording, and I look forward to talking with you next Tuesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. Thank you, and have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.